Welcome to a presentation on neoclassical physics. Neophysics has the most accurate theories of physics. We challenge you to disprove us. If not, we welcome you to join us and profit from the new science. In this presentation, we discuss about the limitations of Bohr's atomic model. Bohr's 1913 circular orbit model of the hydrogen atom adequately explains only the first lines or the alpha lines of Lyman, Balmer, Paschen, Brackett, Pfund, etc. series. It fails to explain the other lines in the series, for example Lyman beta, Balmer beta or H beta, Paschen beta, etc. because it does not account for changes in the orbital angular momentum during the transition of electrons from one circular orbit to another. According to Bohr, when an electron jumps between some orbit numbered I and some other orbit numbered j, its angular momentum changes by delta A, that is equal to j minus I h bar, if j is greater than I. But he did not explain where does this angular momentum go when electrons fall from a higher orbit to a lower orbit, or from where do the electrons gain this angular momentum when they rise from a lower orbit to a higher orbit. However, the energy change of electrons during the transition between circular orbits is accounted for by the equation delta E equals h nu. The energy change delta E in these electronic transitions between circular orbits is assumed to be associated with absorption or emission of light of a particular frequency nu, such that delta E equals h nu, where h is the Planck's constant. It is natural to assume that these photons also carry the exact angular momentum change delta A associated with the corresponding electronic transitions between circular orbits. If not, the other option would be that the angular momentum gets redistributed within the atom to other electrons and the nucleus, which seems unlikely. Bohr's model is essentially based on Coulomb's law. If there is a positive charge with plus Pe Coulomb and a negative charge with minus E Coulomb, then the force of attraction between them is given by Coulomb's law, which is very similar to Newton's law of gravity. The radius of the circle or the circular orbit of this system is continuous. That is, the radial length can be any non-negative real number. The force balance equation is vector F is equal to minus 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Pe into E divided by R cube into vector R, or equivalently divided by R square in the direction of R, like here. And this is equal to minus Ge by R cube into vector R, or minus Ge by R square in the direction of vector R. For circular orbits, the force balance equation implies a square by mr cube equals Ge by R square, where a is the angular momentum, and this equation gives the relationship between radius and angular momentum. Rest of the things are constant. A is determined by the state of motion. This stylized G is a constant. G equals P into E divided by 4 pi epsilon naught, where P is the number of protons P in the nucleus, magnitude of charge on a proton is E, and permittivity of free space is epsilon naught, and pi equals 3.14 something, which is a geometric constant. From classical electrodynamics, we know that an accelerating charge radiates energy. The apparent failure of the Coulomb's law, which fails to counter the radiation energy loss due to an accelerating electron, in this case, is addressed by Bohr by simply assuming that at certain discrete angular momentum values, this system is stable. It does not radiate energy at these specific angular momentum values. It radiates or absorbs energy only when it jumps between these discrete angular momentum levels. And it radiates or absorbs energy in exact chunks that cause the electron from one of these preferred angular momentum values to jump to another preferred value. In order to explain the discrete frequency of light emitted or absorbed by hydrogen atoms, Bohr considered a particular form of discretization. According to Bohr, electrons have discrete circular orbits. The first orbit, or the smallest orbit, is associated with number n equals 1. The second orbit with n equals 2, third with n equals 3, and so on. At some orbit level n, the angular momentum A and energy E are given by these equations. A equals nh bar is the angular momentum equation. E equals b naught minus g square e square m by 2h bar square into 1 by n square. This stylized g is a constant explained earlier. M equals mass of an electron. H bar is h by 2 pi, where h is the Planck's constant. So this is h bar is reduced Planck's constant. B naught is binding energy, which is a constant. Usually this term B naught is dropped from the expression. In some advanced calculations, it will play an important role. We will use it there. Radius r of the circular orbit at level n is given by this equation. R equals n square h bar square by gem, where n h bar is just a. So R equals a square by gem, or n square h bar square by gem. So the size of the circle or the radius increases quadratically with the level n, or the circular orbit level n. R is proportional to n square. Consider two arbitrary orbit levels n equals I and n equals j, such that I is less than j. The angular momenta associated with these levels are a subscript I equals I h bar, a subscript j is j h bar. The energy associated with these levels I and j will be E subscript I equals this expression, b naught minus g square e square m by 2h bar square into 1 by I square, which can be written in terms of angular momentum a subscript I square, and Ej is this, b naught minus g square e square m by 2h bar square into 1 by j square, which is also equal to this equivalent aj square form. The difference between the two energy and angular momentum values of the two levels I and j are this: delta E is Ej minus Ei, delta A is Aj minus Ai. So delta E we get as g square e square m by 2h bar square into 1 by I square minus 1 by j square. So if I and j are the levels, this is how the energy difference between those levels behave. And delta A is nothing but j minus I h bar, which is just linear. It's a linear function of the difference j minus I. The energy difference delta E in the I to j transition is associated with absorption or emission of photons. That is, delta E is this 1 by I square minus 1 by j square form, which is equal to h nu, or h bar omega. That is, when an electron at level I receives a photon with energy h nu or h bar omega, as in this equation, then it rises to level j from level I, or vice versa. When an electron falls from the higher orbit j to lower orbit I, it gives off a photon of energy h nu, as in this equation. Here nu is the frequency of the photon and omega is called the angular frequency, and omega is 2 pi nu. Simultaneously, as the electron changes its orbit level, there will be an associated angular momentum change, delta A, as in this equation. Delta A is j minus I h bar. Even this equation, this change, delta A change, must be balanced by the same photons that were absorbed or emitted for balancing the energy change. So then the question arises, what is the angular momentum carried by a photon? Because these photons have to balance this delta A, angular momentum change also. In case of hydrogen atom, this constant in the delta E energy change equation turns out to be 13.6 electron volt. And this is how the energy and angular momentum values look at different circular orbit levels. That is, at n equals 1, this is 1 h bar, n equals 2, it is 2 h bar, angular momentum 3 h bar, and so on. And energy is minus, at n equals 1, it's minus 13.6 by 1 square, and at n equals 2, it's minus 13.6 by 2 square, and so on. At some level j, the angular momentum is j h bar, and energy is minus 13.6 by j square. This is in the hydrogen atom. And so when it jumps from level I to j or j to I, it is associated with an emission or absorption of this photon. Both h, the Planck's constant, and h bar have units of angular momentum, that is joule second. The angular momentum change delta A in this transition is not explicitly stated that it is related to light absorption or emission by Bohr. We axiomatically assume the energy of a photon is associated with these two formulae, E equals mc square and E equals h nu. By equating the photon energy in these two forms and using the relationship between c, the speed of light, and wavelength lambda, and frequency nu, that is c equals lambda nu, we get these equations, that is mc square equals h nu, and so on. So we get h equals m lambda square nu, and h bar is m lambda by 2 pi square into omega. So using this h bar in the energy equals equation, E equals h nu, we get E equals h bar nu. H bar nu is nothing but h nu. So this equation, E equals h bar omega, can be classically interpreted as a ring of mass m and radius lambda by 2 pi, moving with a linear velocity c, translational velocity c, and rotating with angular velocity omega equals 2 pi nu about the center of the ring mass. So the tangential velocity of this will be c, again c meters per second, speed of light. So this photon or ring mass is associated with angular momentum h bar. So each normal photon can be thought of as associated with angular momentum h bar. Due to rotation about its center of mass. It is possible to have photons with higher angular momentum, such as zh bar, where z is greater than 1. In that case, the frequency should be related to energy as delta E equals ZH nu or ZH bar omega, which is different from the equation we used earlier, which is delta E equals H nu equals H bar omega. The previous equation is with Z equals 1, which is a special case. It gives the Rydberg formula, and these photons with higher angular momenta Z greater than 1 are not captured by Rydberg. That is this equation, delta E equals H nu equals H bar omega, gives the Rydberg formula. And these higher angular momenta photons Z greater than 1 are not captured by the Rydberg formula. So that is all the transition line captured by Lyman, Balmer, Paschen, etc. must be happening with angular momentum change delta A is equal to H bar. That is only one level transition in angular momentum level. Only one level change in angular momentum. So according to Bohr, if an atomic system with one proton, P equals 1, the electron falls from orbit level J to I, then the energy difference between the two levels is given by this expression, E square e power 4 m by 4 pi epsilon naught square whole square 2 h bar square into 1 minus I square by j square, where I and j are the levels, transition levels. P is 1. If in an atomic system with two protons, that is P equals 2, the electron falls from orbit level 2j to level 2i, then the energy difference between the two levels is same as that in one proton P equals 1 system. That is, we get this equation for P equals 2 and the transition 2i 2j. Delta is, there is a factor P square here which becomes 4 into e power 4 m by this expression, and since it's the level 2i 2j transition, it becomes 2i square is 4i square and 2j whole square is 4j square. So these 4 factor cancel each other and we will be left with an expression same as this P equals 1 system, e power 4 by m into this thing into 1 by I square minus 1 by j square. So these two expressions are the same for P equals 2 and P equals 1, these transitions. Therefore, according to Bohr, both these atomic systems, the one proton system and the two proton system, P equals 1 and P equal 2, should release a photon of the same frequency nu, given by h nu equals e power 4 m by 4 pi epsilon naught whole square 2 h bar square into 1 minus I square by 1 minus j square. This energy is the same in both these transitions, so the frequency must also be the same. But the angular momentum changes associated with these electronic transitions in the two systems P equals 1 and P equals 2 are different. In P equals 1, we get delta A1 is J minus I H bar, because the transition is from J to I. And in P equals 2 system, we get delta A2 is 2J minus 2I into H bar, which is twice the angular momentum that we find in P equals 1. If the photons emitted or absorbed by these electronic transitions are thought of as carrying this angular momentum, then the photon released by P equals 2 system after falling from level 2j to 2i will have double the angular momentum than the photon released by P equals 1 system falling from level j to I. Otherwise, both photons have the same frequency nu and same energy delta E. Therefore, according to Bohr's energy criteria, photons released from system P equals 1 should be absorbed by the electrons in the system P equals 2 and vice versa. But this cannot happen since there is an angular momentum mismatch. The photon released by P equals 2 system has double the angular momentum than required by a P equals 1 system. And the photon released by P equals 1 system has only half the angular momentum than required by P equals 2 system. That is, Bohr's criteria leads to angular momentum mismatch between electrons and photons. This mismatch or angular momentum imbalance in Bohr's theory has not been recognized in the standard quantum theory. In the neoclassical scheme, delta E value derived from the electronic transitions remain as it is, like this equation here, but its relationship with the frequency changes. The original equation used by Bohr, delta E equals h nu equals h bar omega, is now generalized as delta E equals z h nu equals z h bar omega. So the emission frequency from the two systems P equals 1 and P equals 2 gets altered. So this is the Bohr equation and this is the neophysics equation, which is the more generalized form with where z can be any number equal to or greater than 1. Here the coefficient of h nu is just 1. In the generalized form, delta E is related to delta A as shown here. That is ultimately delta E. This is from the electronic transition. This remains the same. Delta E becomes equal to 2 pi delta A nu or simply delta A into omega. In case the change in angular momentum is h bar, this will be h bar omega. If it is 2h bar, then it will be 2h bar omega. If it is delta A is 3h bar, then it is 3h bar omega. Similarly, it will become here h nu, 2h nu, 3h nu, and so on. The change in energy, the delta E, is now a function of both change in angular momentum delta A and the frequency of light absorbed or emitted by the electron. The Rydberg formula is limited to the value delta A equals h bar. In neophysics, it can be delta A is h bar, 2h bar, 3h bar, anything, depending on the change of electron angular momentum during transition. So the emission frequency from the two systems, that is P equals 1 and 2 systems, are named nu1 and nu2. So these values nu1 and nu2 are obtained from neophysics here. So for P equals 1, where the transition is between I and j, we get nu1 is delta E by j minus I h bar. It should be h bar here. Delta E j minus I h bar because it is j minus I h. This is the frequency and this is Planck's constant. Delta E by j minus I h. And for P equals 2, where the transition is between 2i and 2j levels, nu2 becomes delta E. The delta E remains the same in both the cases. Same amount of energy is released or absorbed by the electronic transition. Only the angular momentum part will be different, which gives this extra factor j minus I or 2j minus I in this case. So in this case, nu2 will be only half the value of nu1. Nu2 is nu1 by nu2. It is only half, but the system P2 had twice the angular momentum that we saw in the previous slide. So according to neophysics, an electron in system P equals 2 falling from level 2j to level 2i releases a photon of only half the frequency of the photon released by the electron in system P equals 1, which was falling from level j to level I. Hence, these photons cannot be exchanged between the two systems. That is according to neophysics. As we noted, the Bohr scheme or the Rydberg formula are valid only when the change in angular momentum due to transitions is del A equals h bar. That is only unit change in angular momentum. And this condition corresponds correctly only to a single step transition in Bohr scheme. That is transitions between level n and 2, or between levels 2 and 3, or between levels 3 and 4, and so on, between levels I and I plus 1 in general. Note again that when j minus I equals 1, that is there is only one level change, or delta A equals h bar, we get back Rydberg formula from the generalized equation. So this is the generalized equation. In this, if we use the condition delta A equals h bar, this generalized equation plus this condition delta A equals h bar gives back the Rydberg formula. When j minus I is greater than 1, that is the transition levels are multi-level, more than one level, or delta A is greater than h bar, that is when delta A can be 2h bar, 3h bar, zh bar in general, where z is greater than or equal to 1. Then we get higher order Rydberg formulae like this, where we get nu by 2, nu by 3 and nu by z frequencies. That is, these are the subharmonics of the fundamental frequency nu. Nu we got when j minus I equals 1 or delta A equals h bar. In this case we got nu, and these are the subharmonics of that. When angular momentum is higher, we get subharmonics or harmonics. So the strict balancing of the energy and angular momentum changes implies that Bohr's scheme only explains the alpha lines of the first frequency of Lyman, Balmer, Paschen, etc. series. Only the alpha lines or the first frequency. In Lyman series, it explains the transition between n equals 1 and n equal 2 levels. In Paschen series, it explains the transition between levels 2 and 3. In bracket series, it explains transition between levels 3 and 4. In Fund series, it explains transition between levels 4 and 5. It can only correctly explain one-step transitions in angular momentum. That is when delta A equals h bar. Since Bohr orbits are circular, the energy transitions also have to be one-step transitions. This is the limitation of Bohr's orbit. We need elliptical orbits in order to fully explain Lyman, Paschen, bracket, Fund series. That is where energy transitions imply multi-level transitions. That is j greater than or equal to I plus 1. But angular momentum transition implies only one level transition. That is what we need is to explain this Rydberg formula or the Lyman, Balmer, Paschen series is multi-level energy transitions but single level angular momentum transition. Bohr had the right quantitative discrete values of energy to explain the Rydberg formula. But instead of exploiting the general elliptic orbit solutions of the classical two-body problem, he wrongly thought that the pure circular orbits itself explained the Rydberg formula. Sommerfeld added more confusion and miscalculations into the mix. The standard classical mechanical solutions were never applied properly. We show here that a proper classical application of results is enough to explain the gross and the fine structure of hydrogen spectrum. In this presentation, we only focus on the gross structure and not the fine structure. The relationship between energy and angular momentum appearing in Bohr's circular orbit is same as that we get in Kepler-Newton one-body approximation in classical mechanics. To map between the two systems, Kepler-Newton and Bohr, we can use this equivalence relationship, GE equals GMM, where GE has this stylized G, and this is normal G in GMM. But we know in general the Kepler-Newton system gives elliptic orbits as shown here. In the equation corresponding to elliptic orbits, epsilon is the eccentricity of the orbit. When epsilon is 0, it becomes the circular orbit solution shown here earlier. When epsilon is between 0 and 1, we get elliptical orbits. When epsilon is greater than 1, we get unbounded trajectories. So this equation equals GMM by R, where GMM by R is like the binding energy B naught we saw earlier, minus 1 minus epsilon naught square, epsilon square into G square M cube by 2A square. So this is the general elliptic equation relating energy and angular momentum of the orbit. Not elliptic, ellipse equation. So the energy angular momentum relationship, this relationship implies that there exists an upper limit and lower limit on the energy value for a given angular momentum A. That is, for a given angular momentum A, the minimum possible energy happens when epsilon is 0. Here. So that is, the circular orbits have the minimum energy for a given angular momentum A. This E mean is G mm by R minus G square M cube by 2A square. This 1 minus epsilon square term is missing because epsilon is 0. So this is the E mean, minimum energy at a given angular momentum level A. As epsilon tends to 1, the orbit becomes more and more elliptic or more eccentric, and these orbits are associated with higher and higher energies. As it becomes more eccentric, the orbit will have higher energy at the same angular momentum A. Conversely, from the energy and angular momentum relationship here, we also get this. There is an upper limit on angular momentum. That is, for a given energy, the angular momentum has a maxima when epsilon is 0. That is, we get a circular orbit. That is, we get that circular orbit has the maximum angular momentum for a given energy E. In elliptic orbits, angular momentum can be any value below this maxima at the given energy level. At A equals 0, that is when angular momentum becomes 0, we cannot use these energy relationship anymore. So it has to be greater than 0 for these equations to be valid. In terms of the atomic system, the limits on the energy that we saw earlier becomes this equation. That is, energy has to be between less than B naught and greater than B naught minus G square E square M by 2 H bar square N square. So energy has to lie between these two values, and this is the minimum energy, E mean. That is, given the condition that the angular momentum is NH bar. The angular momentum is the same as the nth circular orbit level, whereas energy has multiple values here in this case because it's not a circular orbit anymore. So that is, for a given angular momentum A subscript n equals NH bar, energy can be any value such that this is the minima, which is the circular orbit solution when both the angular momentum is at circular orbit level n and the energy is at circular orbit level n. These are the two equations. So this is the minima. We can change the value of n to n plus 1. So the overall energy reduces, but this n increases, n plus 1. Or we can have n plus 2, E equals b naught minus g square e square by m into 2h bar square into n plus 2 whole square. Or we can have b naught minus g square e square by m into 2h bar square into n plus x whole square, where x is any integer greater than or equal to 1. So x can be up to infinity. So energy can be in any of these values from n to n plus x. So the existence of these multiple energy levels at a single or one angular momentum level can be illustrated as shown in the next slide. This figure shows that if we allow elliptic orbits, then the first angular momentum level, that is the angular momentum level with 1 h bar, can be associated with all these energy levels in the blue shaded region. That is energy level 1, 2, 3, etc. up to infinity. Any energy level equal to or greater than 1 is a valid solution, is a valid possibility. Similarly, the third angular momentum level, that is angular momentum with 3h bar, can be associated with all these energy levels in the red shaded region. That is energy equals 3, 4, energy level is 3, 4, 5, etc. up to infinity, or any energy level equal to or greater than 3. In terms of the atomic system, the limits on the angular momentum becomes this. So ultimately we get that A lies between h bar and nh bar. That is, at the lower limit, h bar is the lowest possible limit and nh bar is the highest possible limit. That is, for a given energy E subscript n, written here, E subscript n is b naught minus g square e square m by 2 h bar square n square, which is same energy as the nth circular orbit level. So that is, for a given energy En, as shown here, the angular momentum can be any value between 1 h bar and nh bar. That is, A equals h bar, A equals 2h bar, A equals 3h bar, up to A equals nh bar. If the energy level is n, then the angular momentum can be at any level 1 to n, with 1 h bar being the lowest allowed angular momentum and nh bar being the maximum possible. These then define the first two quantum numbers, that is n, which defines the energy level, is the principal quantum number, and the coefficient of h bar in the angular momentum equation, that is in the equation A equals LH bar, where L can be any number 1, 2, 3, n, is the orbital angular momentum number. That is, L is the orbital angular momentum with all these possibilities 1 to n. And L indicates the angular momentum level of the electronic orbit. Both these numbers, n and L, are needed to fully explain the Lyman, Balmer, Paschen, etc. series. Bohr's circular orbits only explain the alpha lines of Lyman, Balmer, Paschen, etc. In Bohr's scheme, the same circular orbit level number n is tied with the principal quantum number also, same n, and the orbital angular momentum number also, where L equals n. So all these three numbers, so basically both these numbers, principal quantum number and the orbital angular quantum number, becomes same in a circular orbit. But in elliptic orbit, for a given principal quantum number n, the orbital angular momentum number L can be any number 1 to n. That is, the orbital angular momentum number can be L equals 1, 2, 3 up to n, any number. But in case of circular orbit, these two are same. The principal quantum number is also n, orbital quantum number is also n, and the circular orbit level is also n. So existence of these multiple angular momentum levels at a single energy level can be illustrated as shown in the next slide. This figure shows that if we allow elliptic orbits, then the second energy level can be associated with these angular momentum levels in the red shaded region. That is angular momentum level L equals 2 and 1, or any angular momentum equal to or less than 2. Similarly, the jth energy level can be associated with all these angular momentum levels in the blue shaded region. That is angular momentum level J, J minus 1, J minus 2 down to 1. So any energy level, any angular momentum level equal to or less than J, it can be associated with the energy level J. This figure shows the elliptical orbits based explanation of the Gauss hydrogen spectrum. In Lyman series, the electronic transitions can happen only between first and second angular momentum levels L equals 1 and L equals 2. But transitions can happen between the first energy level n equals 1 and any level n greater than 1. That is n equals 2, 3, 4 or up to infinity. That is, the electron can rise from the first circular orbit to the second circular orbit or to some elliptical orbit with the same semi-lattice rectum as the radius of the second circular orbit. Because semi-lattice rectum is connected directly with angular momentum value, these two are linked. So same angular momentum level means same semi-lattice rectum. So for all these orbits, either it will be in a second circular orbit or the semi-lattice rectum will be same as the radius of the second circular orbit. So in Lyman series, the Lyman alpha line involves angular momentum jump between L equals 1 and L equals 2 levels, and energy jump between n equals 1 and n equals 2 levels. This indicates a transition between circular orbits. Lyman beta line involves angular momentum jump same L equals 1 and 2, but the energy jump is between n equals 1 and n equals 3 levels. So this transition is between the first circular orbit and a slightly elliptic orbit with the same semi-lattice rectum as the radius of the second circular orbit. Lyman gamma involves angular momentum jump same L equals 1 and L equals 2, but the energy jump is now between n equals 1 and n equal 4 level. So this transition is between the first circular orbit and a bit higher eccentricity orbit than the Lyman beta case. So all the ellipses in the Lyman series always have the same semi-lattice rectum as the radius of the second circular orbit. Only the eccentricity increases with increasing energy levels of transition. In Balmer series, the electronic transitions can happen only between second and third angular momentum levels, that is L equals 2 and L equals 3. But transitions can happen between second energy level n equals 2 and any other level n greater than 2, that is n equals 3, 4, 5, etc. In Balmer series, the H alpha line involves angular momentum jump between L equals 2 and L equals 3 levels, and the energy level jump between n equals 2 and n equals 3. The H beta line involves angular momentum same L equals 2 and L equals 3, but the energy level jump is now between n equals 2 and n equals 4. Similarly, H gamma involves Same angular momentum jump L equals 2 and L equals 3, but energy level jump from N equals 2 to N equals 5. Or some. Okay. Therefore, we need elliptic orbits just to explain the gross structure of the hydrogen atom. Bohr's circular orbits are not enough to explain the Rydberg formula in the context of hydrogen spectrum. And these elliptic orbits cannot explain the fine structure as Sommerfeld misunderstood. We shall demonstrate a classical theoretic explanation for the fine structure of hydrogen spectrum in a future presentation. In this presentation, we showed that Bohr's circular orbits are not enough. We need elliptic orbits to explain all this Lyman, Balmer, Paschen series in the Rydberg formula. We need elliptic orbits already in this case. So we end this presentation here. Thank you. If you want to understand the concepts of physics in the clearest way, regardless of the concerns about scoring high marks in exams, please visit neophysics.com. Thank you.